Amazing. Awesome. We're going to get started. And so that we hopefully have enough time to give you guys some practical skills. So this training live session is called AI-Proof SEO, creating blog posts in less than 5 minutes and rank in ChatGPT. Now, for all those who are either new to Evan or me, we're each going to give a very quick introduction right now so that you know who's speaking and why you should be listening. Some of you that are here today are some of my former students, are some people that I worked with in the past. And so I used to work at Google way back in the day. And then I've started my own ad agency at Digital. And we've run ads over the last like 10, 11 years for companies all over the world. And most recently this year, we have done a lot more around AI automation. And especially this year, our Google impressions went from being less than 50,000 to almost being 500,000 in 6 months. And that was interesting to see for us because I'd never really taken content seriously before that. I actually do not really even enjoy creating content, but with AI, I was able to find a way that makes it more fun for me, less time consuming. And we also got results with it. So I'll be sharing that with you today. And then we got Evan here. I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes to introduce yourself as well.
Cool, thanks, Pamela. So I am on the opposite end of Pamela in the spectrum of liking content. I love writing. And for me, the problem with AI was quality and trying to create good quality content with AI, because I can see the writing on the wall. If you're not using these tools, you're going to get left behind. You're just not going to be as efficient as you could be. So my name is Evan Rowley. I run a content agency that is focused on creating high-performing content to drive sales for brands from organic search and in AI search. So we work with everyone from e-commerce companies to B2B manufacturers now and SaaS companies, basically anyone selling online. And I really got into this and built my skills by growing a blog about motorcycle gear from basically 0 to 250,000 organic visitors a year. And the average earnings on the site are about $2 per visitor in terms of products that we sell and revenue we generate. So we also rank about 90% of our pages in ChatGPT. So we're starting to ride the AI wave now and figure out how to get citations in AI. So that's really what I focus on, is how do we create really high quality content and then scale that up for your brand. So I'm going to be digging into that today.
Awesome, wonderful. So I'm going to go right into it and share my screen, and I'll show you guys the automation that we use to create a lot of content within a very short amount of time frame. And then Evan is going to come in and kind of like critique that outcome from his expert perspective and show you, hey, where do you actually need that human in the loop? Where's AI maybe not enough? And how can you like bridge that gap of using AI as an automation, but also being really, really useful for your own company or for your customers? Now, the platform that we typically use for automations is called Relay.app. I know there's N8N out there, there's Make.com and so on. Relay.app was founded by some of the guys that ran Gmail, that product at Google. And I found it especially convenient as I would call myself a non-techie person. I don't know, a lot of people would say I work in tech, but I don't like coding. I don't like dealing with tech stuff. So it's very user-friendly if you're not a tech person. So let me go in here right away. Now, the goal for this automation, there can be a lot of different automations out there, right? The goal of this automation was that I have this huge content folder of all kinds of like articles, research, and so on from my master's in psychology degree that I did at Harvard. And actually, since the beginning, when I started the degree back in 2018, I wanted to publish that content. But as you can imagine, before AI, that task was very tedious. I would have had to go manually through every article and then think about what kind of content would this be good for? Does it fit for Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, video? I would have had to come up with a video script myself. I would have had to come up with the images myself. And that was just all way too much work that was not exciting for me at all. And for those who know me a little bit, I'm a big fan of simply doing those things in life that are fun and enjoyable and maximizing the time that you spend on those things. So once AI came into the picture, I was like, hey, I can actually automate this so that, for example, every Monday, the automation runs through my content folder, my whole Harvard master's degree content folder, and it then looks up a new article. It chooses a new article on its own, and then it adds a name to it, in this case, processed, so that we know that later on, we don't need to take that article again, and it's already been done. And what it does then, out of this one article, it generates a blog post, it generates social media content, and it generates a newsletter article. And all that, when the automation runs, is probably done in like 2 to 3 minutes. So let me go into the steps so that you actually see how this works. So you can see here, it runs weekly on a Monday. You can set this up to run every day, to run on a specific day of the month, to run it in a custom schedule like every other day of the week, and so on. For me, every Monday worked best. I first had it every second days, and I figured out that I'm not fast enough to even process the content this thing is giving me. So once a week is absolutely enough. Now, then I go into the folder and I say, hey, look up the parent folder, which is one off. It's called Harvard Masters. And then make sure you exclude any documents that have like screenshot in them, or invoice, or receipt, or degree, or thesis, because all those would be documents that wouldn't be relevant for this purpose. So whenever you work with an AI tool, it's not just important what you include, but I would say it's even more so important what you exclude and knowing what you don't want. That helps you progress a lot faster. And then I added a step in between that actually I figured 2 weeks ago was still needed. Now it's not needed anymore. That's how fast AI moves. To convert files from like any kind of file type into text, so it could be processed further. But that's a step you don't really need anymore. Then I'm saying, hey, whatever file you chose in step 2, add this new name to it. Change the name. Yeah. And then let's go into the nitty-gritty here, generating the blog post. And I'm going to put this prompt for you in the chat box, and you will also get a couple of resources from Evan after the training so that you have this and you can use it. So what I'm pretty much doing here is I'm saying, hey, look at the provided file, focus on one specific problem that highlights the pain points shared and the solutions developed in this specific file. Make sure that it's relevant to the keyword researched in the instructions below. And when I talk about the keywords researched in the instructions below, I tell it to use, for example, trends.google.com, answer the public, and so on. So there are a lot of different tools that you can use, and there's a lot of different ways to include certain keywords. But this is just one of them. And maybe if we'll have enough time, maybe we can also like see how this applies to each one of you so that this gets even a bit more customized for you. So I tell it to research the keywords for me. I tell it to, hey, look, choose the pain points. Look at the solution. So I want this to be emotionally relevant to my target audience as well. Because for those of you who have attended one of my lectures, I tend to say, people buy emotions, not products. So you always want to speak to people's emotions. Then I say the article should take the reader on a specific how-to journey. I want it to be really, really useful for them. I want it to be something where they can say, hey, you know what? This is helpful for me. I can do X, Y, Z when I follow these steps. Then I can say, hey, while you can include some bullet points on numbered lists, it should also include paragraphs and read as naturally as possible. What I've seen a lot of times when creating content with AI is that it just throws out a bullet pointed list, and that's all you get. The one thing I would probably add here as well that I haven't added yet, which we still keep seeing in the output, is to remove the M dashes, like the longer dashes, because you definitely don't want them in there. That's the first sign that something was created by AI. So of course, again, include that in the instruction. Include what you don't want. And then I gave it more specific guidance. So I said, write it in the we form, right? I said, do not mention the document itself. In some of our automations, I also say, for example, do not mention any participant names, do not mention any client details. So I'm really, really particular about what kind of data it can use and what kind of data it cannot use. And then I give some examples about bullet points. I talk about it being highly informative. And then I go into more structural SEO stuff, where I say, hey, above the body of the blog article, write SEO and AI optimized primary keywords, secondary keywords, and a meta description. And then at the end of the article, at or in, I always mistake those two. I say generate AI optimized 7 to 12 FAQs where each answers at least 2 to 3 sentences. Remember how I mentioned before we went from like less than 50,000 to almost like 500,000 impressions in Google? FAQs were a key aspect of that. Like when you add FAQs to your landing page, it does help those AI tools crawl your landing page and then match you with the right queries. Because we have gone from like 2, 3, 4, 5 keyword word searches in Google to whole questions that people are asking. And we want to make sure that whatever questions people are asking, our resources and our products or services show up. And the way that you do this is by simply adding FAQs. I would even go so far as to say to add FAQs to almost every single landing page that you have on your website, unless you have thousands of pages. And then I also give it in the instruction to use a clear meta structure, add H1, 2s, and so on. And then I tell it to search for the most relevant keywords. And at this point, I'm going to take a quick break for any questions, quick pause. If anybody has any questions about the prompt, anything I said until this point, because I want to make this as interactive for you guys as possible. If any question pops up in the meantime, you can also always put it in the chat box. And then, of course, I want to make sure that I include the file here so that it considers that. So let's click on done here. And I just want to run this. I just want to start a test run so you guys see what kind of like blog post it would come up with so far. I also don't know which file it just shows, so I do not know what the outcome of this will be. Okay, so you can see it's pretty quick until it goes through the first 10 steps, and then it typically takes a little bit for step 10, 11, and 12.
Hey, I have a question for you, Pamela, because I've run into this a lot with automations. How do you handle errors? Like if it runs into something it doesn't know what to do and it runs into an error, does Relay give you an email, or does it have like, can you set up the branch and do something else if it hits a certain type of error?
Yeah, typically it sends you an email that it ran into an error. Yeah. Or there is with certain steps. So let me pause this one for here for now. With certain steps, you can actually define. So let's see if I see this here. I think I'd have to go back. Let me remember that. I think I'd have to look it up in the editor, but I'm going to get back to that. So let's view at the output of the blog post. This is what we have here right now. It's not formatted. We're going to go through this kind of like slowly. And Evan, let me know what you see would you, as like an expert in this, would improve and where like AI is falling short, or would you recommend like improving about the prompt to get a better outcome? So this seems to have chosen a file about digital marketing burnout, decision fatigue, overwhelm. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the intro is actually pretty good. What I'm looking for in intros, first of all, intros are, I would say, for most pieces of content, it's 80% of the article's importance, because if you don't hook the person in the intro, they're going to bounce back and go back to Google. And I see so many brands screw this up because they think, well, it's just an intro. We just have to introduce the topic. But if you're not really hooking them and keeping them to read a little bit longer, or at least do what Google calls goal completion. So like if they're coming to your article to find a solution, like buy a product, if they're coming for best mattress or something, they may only be there for 5 seconds, but there's a massive difference between they clicked a product on your website and they went back to Google. So if it's a 5-second completion, but they went to a brand and they went and bought a product, then Google says that's a great piece of content. It solved their problem. But if they go back to Google, now they're going to say, oh, that's not a good piece of content. We're not going to recommend that brand. And that actually hurts you in the search rankings, having that kind of low quality content. So that makes intros super, super important. And what I'm looking for here is, have we hit on the search intent, like why people are coming to this page? So for this, search intent is, there's a lot of different ways to get it. The best way to get it is really to look at the search page for the keywords that you're trying to rank for, and just try to figure out what type of person is Googling this and what are they looking for. And you can get some idea of that by what Google is showing them. If there's a lot of content there already that fits the topic pretty well, then you can say, okay, this is what Google thinks people are really looking for out of all the stuff that's probably written about that topic. And then are we fitting into that, or are we doing something totally different? Because again, if someone lands on that page and they're like, this is not what I'm here for, they're going to bounce back and go look at other content. So are we nailing the search intent? I think this is doing a pretty good job of that. Are we creating authority and expertise? Are we letting them know that we are the right people to tell them the solution to their problem, or whatever information that they're looking for? This does that pretty well just by saying, we've heard the same story from marketing managers over and over. There's probably more that could be put in here based on Pamela's expertise. Like, we've heard this, or in my studies as a Harvard student on burnout among marketing managers, I've seen this over and over. Then it's like, wow, someone at Harvard is telling me that that they're going to go through this topic with me. That creates a lot of authority and expertise, and again, signals to people, I should stay here because this is someone who knows what they're talking about. So we're looking for that. And then we're also looking for rapport, which is kind of a fuzzy thing that Google often, or AI often, gets wrong, which is create rapport with that reader. So in this case, it's a digital marketer coming here, and it, I think, does a decent amount of that by using terms like decision fatigue, stalled execution, creeping burnout. These are kind of, it's the language that someone in a digital marketing position is going to use. So that's another signal to them that you understand them. You're not just a researcher in your high tower, but you are someone who understands how they talk, how they think, the things that they're going through. And it's another signal that, all right, I'm in the right place. I should stay here and read on, learn more. So intro hits on a bunch of things that I like to see. Can you keep scrolling down, Pamela?
Yeah, maybe just before we continue, what do you think about the primary and secondary keywords?
Yeah, I think for the topic that you brought up, pretty good. I try to keep this list pretty short, more like just a topic, 1 or 2 topics that are really the core topics, and then maybe secondary topics rather than keywords. I found in my experience, changing that mentality from keywords to topics has been super, super useful, because Google and AI are so smart now that they're not, the old strategies of just stuffing your page full of keywords does not work anymore.
What would you say is the difference between keywords and topics? How can one recognize that? I think we just lost you for a second. Say something.
Yeah, here should be working now.
Oh. Yeah, what, so, just for people to better understand it, what's the difference between keywords and topics in your work?
Yeah, so it's nuanced. Like keywords to me is when you're using a keyword research tool, you're looking at search volumes for specific keywords. That's kind of what I mean by the framework or the context of keywords versus topics. Topics is more human understandable. What are the ways that you and I would talk about a topic? So like I'll give you an example of one that I was looking at today for a client. Like the in the keyword framework, you might list out like summer jacket and hot weather motorcycle jacket as the same or as two different keywords, sorry. But they are essentially the same topic. We're talking about the same things, like a jacket for hot weather. So that's one topic. We don't necessarily need to put all the different keywords in there. And almost by prescribing, we need to get all these keywords in there and telling an AI, like, we need these keywords represented, it may sound less natural. And again, we want people to go through the piece at every stage and feel like this is a natural piece of writing by someone who understands me. So when you're starting to stuff keywords in there, then it can feel very jarring very quickly.
Okay. So that's definitely something I think that one can improve on the prompt side to focus more on topics and keywords. Okay, so let's continue here. So it at least created an H1, it created an H2 for us here, and even H3s. So let's continue here. Let me know what you think also about the H2, the headlines that it came up with here.
Yeah, so I see this often again with AI that it starts with the why section. There's ways to prompt around this, but it comes down to search intent. Like you think about why is this person here on this page? They probably are facing burnout as a marketer or decision fatigue, one of those keyword stuffed differences, one of those topics. So we don't need to tell them why it hits them hard because they're already dealing with it. It's important information to have for context, especially for AI crawlers that are reading it, but it's something that can go further down. Like most of the content that I'm writing is more bottom of funnel. Like for informational content, it matters a little bit less, but still to keep their attention, you want to get them the information that they want. So when we're talking about burnout for digital marketers, I'm thinking we need to get them the solution as high up on that page as possible, get them some, build that trust with them immediately, and then get them some quick wins that they can read and realize, okay, these are some things that I can do, and then maybe understand a little bit more behind the scenes about the problem for those who want to dig in deeper. But most people are just looking for a solution to their problem, an answer to their problem as quickly as possible. So give that to them. So again, this is a good section, but I don't think it needs to be at the top. It shouldn't be right after the introduction. It should be below that 5-step anti-overwhelm protocol, which is good. Like especially having steps and ordered lists, that kind of stuff works really well for humans and for AI. It's just how the machines think. It's how we think. We want to have a broken down process that we can go through. It's very easy to follow. So I like that, but I would just move that up and make that right after the introduction. Like, okay, you have burnout. We know how to handle it. Here's how we've seen helps, people overcome that burnout.
Yeah, and maybe before we move into the steps, I would probably also change those bullet points to a paragraph. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the bullet points in this case aren't really necessary.
I could go either way. I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
One thing I would say about bullet points is we almost always, when we have a bullet pointed list, we're bolding as well, even with paragraphs too. And this is something that most AI tools won't do just because of formatting issues. But bolding the key phrases that are providing value or creating curiosity so that people's eyes can bounce down the page, that's super, super helpful.
So just for everyone, and I hope I understand that correctly as well, because English isn't my native language either. So bolding means just marking a couple of words in bold, so it's easy to read, correct? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So we got the steps here. It marked it as an H3. Yeah, let me know. I'm going to scroll slowly and let me know if you want me to stop somewhere at those steps.
Pamela?
Yes.
The chat functionality isn't showing up in my Google Meet.
Oh, no. Do you have a question?
I had a few things I wanted to say and add in the chat, but the functionality is not there.
Okay. Sorry about that. Tell us.
What? Tell you? Well,
yeah, what questions do you have or remarks?
Bullet points are good for conversion rate optimization. It's, well, we know people don't have very much time to read, and the more they can scan, the more they will have in their head after they've read it. And one more tip for to be ranking high in AI is to have a definition box right after the beginning. Yeah, like take the main keyword and then define it in a so-called definition box. Keep that short to 3 to 4 sentences maybe. And important for AI is also that if the article header is a question, then that question should be answered right at the beginning. That's something that AI really likes. Those are my 2 cents. Yeah. And the chat box missing here. I don't know why that is.
Oh, we're just going through it step by step. But
Okay.
thank you so much for these details. Yeah, they're very important. Evan?
Yeah, definitely agree. FAQs and like having questions and then answering the question immediately afterward works super well to get citations in AI. I think that's part of why FAQs work really well, but you can certainly do it at the article level as well.
Let me keep scrolling here.
Yeah, these are pretty good. Again, I don't know too much about this topic. It's the first time I've seen it, but I've been a digital marketer, so I can kind of relate to this. But what this makes me think of is a lot of times when you're, especially when you don't have a lot of information about the topic, if you just ask the AI, like, create me an article about cookie recipes, it is going to give you the most general information that applies to the broadest idea of that topic, basically. And generally that doesn't add anything new to the conversation, especially because the AI can only pull from what's already in its database, in its knowledge, basically. So what I talk to a lot with brands about is info gain. How are you going to add information to this? And because of Pamela's cool workflow here, like she already has the info gain built in because she already has the info from her firsthand experience that's generating these blog posts. But if you're just trying to generate blog posts for your brand, you're not going to have any of that info. So there's a lot of different ways we do that, but I can say what it does is it helps fix up these like steps or solutions or products or whatever it is for your case and make them a lot more specific and actionable and relevant to your brand because it's information that's coming from your brand. And a lot of times, like for my case, we're reviewing motorcycle gear. I will just talk about my experiences with that piece of gear or that category of gear, and that will add a little bit more to the article. With more technical clients, we're having their engineering team answer a couple questions, or we're having the founder answer a discovery document about the brand and their products and their USPs. And that really helps make the articles feel like the brand and add a lot more real information and meat to them because it's information that's not usually found elsewhere on the internet. The AI doesn't, automatically have it. Yeah, also from Reddit, other places.
Just real quick, because I'm so glad you touched on Infogame because for me, it's so natural to have these folders, but I have to keep reminding myself that in some instances, one has to look for that information. And it was the same for like my agency at the beginning of this year. I'm like, where am I going to get that information from? And what I did is, and unfortunately we don't have enough time here to go into this, but I simply used any file that is being added to Meet recording folder as the primary information for content, right? So even this training right now, as it's being recorded, it will go into this automation, and then based on that, there will be content created, which we have down here. So lots of opportunities to use different kinds of sources, even if you might think you might not have anything at hand.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point. Any recordings, call recordings, brand podcasts that anyone in your brand might have been on, YouTube videos, these all make for really good invoking pieces without adding a lot of load for your team.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
So in terms of content here for the steps, for me personally with that background, I think it's pretty much on point. I would not change much about it. What I see here is that this would look great in the Instagram carousel post. So there's lots of other things one can create from this. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it added a quick self-check here. Wow. What do we think about that?
Yeah, I ask these types of queries of ChatGPT a lot, and I find that it has a tendency to overcomplicate rather than simplify, even when you tell it to simplify. So this is a very interesting topic because it's about mental health and about overwhelm and burnout, yet it's giving you like all these long checklists and things you got to do to solve your overwhelm problem. So again, that's search intent too. It's thinking, okay, why is the person here? And then how can I solve that problem for them? And then these are the types of things, depending on your brand and your space and the type of content that you're going to feed back into the prompt, and then make sure that the prompt is then generating better and better content over time.
Yeah. The thing I like about this here, to be honest, it added an element that I would have not even thought about.
Mm-hmm.
So it brought in a new perspective, and then here is really clear what you should do. So I think while, you know, this is about like cognitive overload and us feeling overwhelmed, I think that's actually a pretty helpful section. So I'm really glad it added that.
Yeah,
and
now
that
that
in
I'm seeing the
itself could
scoring.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe this would make more sense at the very beginning then as like a little quiz. Like take this and just sum up the number that you get and then give your score. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It would actually make more sense in terms of the flow. And then say, based on these steps, based on the result, read through these steps.
Yeah. And people love quizzes. They really do.
Then we have a couple more H2s, measure progress without extra work, 14-day rollout. Man, this honestly, looking at this, I could probably turn this into a whole guide rather than a blog post.
Yeah. Yeah, this can get, these types of things can get super, super long because AI can add tons and tons more detail.
Yeah. So what might be good is to add a limit in terms of words. Would you have a tip in of how many words an average blog article should be?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're writing more commercial-oriented blog posts with like reviews of content or reviews of products, and then we're feeding it like our thoughts on the products and stuff. And our articles are between like 1,500 and 2,500 words. But actually the data, I just went to a conference where we talked about SEO, and the data is showing that post length, it used to correlate highly with rankings. The longer the post, the more likely you were to rank. And now it has effectively zero correlation to rankings. So as long as you are satisfying the search intent and helping that user complete their goal, it doesn't matter how long it is. If they're just there to get a definition of something, it can be a 300-500 word blog post because you don't want to overload them with information that they don't need.
So I'm just trying to check the word count that we have here. We have 1,096 words here with this article.
Mm.
So, yeah. Okay, let's go back to. Anyway, we have a couple more H2s. Looks okay. What do you think about the FAQs?
They're okay. I mean, some of them are kind of when I'm looking at these FAQs, what I'm thinking about is a couple things. What is AI going to ask? Like when it is branching out into topics. So when you ask like mental health advice from AI and it goes off on searches, it's going to be searching all these like hyper specific queries. So I'm trying to think, you can see in ChatGPT when you run it for a query, you're usually able to break in, or maybe in Gemini, you can see like what it's actually searching. And so you'll get a feel for how it kind of phrases things. For example, it loves versus queries, like this versus that, and looks for those kind of FAQs or those kind of questions answered somewhere on the web or whole articles on them. So I like the definition, what exactly is decision fatigue for marketing managers? The other thing I'm thinking about is people also ask, sorry, I go back to that, on Google, when you're Googling and you see the people also ask box, that has its own style as well. So think about what are the types of questions that usually show up in that for our topics. Just Google the topic that you're writing for too, and you'll see if it has one for that. And you can see what those questions are. Those are good questions to include in the FAQ. But something like, how is this different from typical productivity advice? So that one, I think is a fine question, but you should include the context in the question, because having this there, it doesn't stand on its own. We don't know what this is when we're just reading that FAQ. So how is like burnout recovery different from typical productivity advice? Maybe how I would rephrase that, and then include that in the answer as well. Like burnout recovery focuses on structural changes, and then you can leave the rest. But instead of just we focus on structural changes, because you got to also think about these FAQs as standalones. Like the standalone question and answer has to sit on its own, and that's how it'll get pulled into AI and other places.
Would you recommend, for example, here instead of we putting in the brand name?
Yeah, also put in the brand name too. Again, it's a context thing. Like you've got to make sure that it stands on its own. Who is we? We don't know who we is unless we read the whole article.
Yeah.
Yeah, same with can this system work for teams, not just individuals? Maybe it could be like, how do I recover my team from burnout?
Yeah. So looking at these FAQs, I just want to go back to the input here real quick. I'm going to close this and we're going to go back to the editor. You asked me if there's an error. That would be here. So if no files are found, I can say continue without a result or pause the run and send a notification.
Got it. Cool.
So that's what happens. So here in the initial prompt, what we could add based on that is mention the brand name a bit more. Mention the brand name. In this case, hustle less and live more. Would you say mention it once, twice, 3 times? Do you want to give it a number or you just keep it open?
I usually don't give it a number. Mention the brand name. You could say at least once. Usually try to be more prescriptive, like mention when you are mentioning our services, mention the brand name. It's something that usually I will put something in, like mention the brand name at least once and then see what the output is. and then kind of tune it from there, because every model is going to be different. Like Gemini, ChatGPT, Perplexity, they're all going to be different in terms of how they interpret the instructions. So you just kind of got to play with it until it feels right to you.
Perfect. What else did we have that we wanted to include? Would you include the topics here instead of the keywords?
I think that's fine, because you're basically giving it the instructions to go and search the keywords. So yeah, you could say topics or keywords, but I don't think that ChatGPT really makes it a difference between those two.
Or replaced. Okay, awesome. Anything else about the prompt that we would want to change here?
Oh, Justin?
Yeah, I like to add into the prompt, write an EEAT compliant article. Yeah, and I add to it, please assume you are part of the team. And then also add to the blog, to the prompt, please read the whole blog section we've created so far. Yeah, EEAT, I'd put a dash between the letters. So that
Oh, yeah, you would? Okay.
Yeah. EEAT is one of the newest frameworks from Google. It's the expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and what's the A for? Expertise, experience. What's the A stand for? T, trustworthiness, authoritativeness.
Trustworthiness, yeah.
Trustworthiness, yeah.
Yeah. And then I also like to add to the prompt, please add 3 subtle mentions of our brand and why our products and services are the best solution to the problem. And I use this in Gemini, and it usually does a really good job of that.
So that's a great add-on. What I would probably do here, what I have to do, is I would want to add more knowledge here so that the prompt can reference what those products or solutions would be. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to give it specific links. It should add them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go through this.
Yeah, one other thing, I'll have to look at my prompt exactly how we phrase this, but we focus on benefits, not features. And Pamela, you said that earlier, or a variant of that. But basically what we want to do is write for the perspective of the customer. Instead of saying, we offer this, this, and this, we will help you in this, this, and this way. Like, what are the benefits to the person that's going to use your product or your service, rather than the thing that you sell and its different features?
Yep. Very good. Very good. Justin?
Yeah, I can add something to that. The reason why you should use benefits, not features, is because people absolutely don't like to think. They don't like to use their brain. And when people go to a website, they will only read the headlines often. And if you've only got the features in there and people don't like to think, they'll leave the website without having really gained anything. So people don't like to think. People really surf along the website really quick. So you've got to really tell them what's in it for them, the benefit, yeah?
Yep.
That's why, because...
Very well said.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to be a bit conscious of time. I'm gonna save this prompt right now as it is, and then I would hit publish, so it updates the runs. as you can see, there's a lot more that we could get done here with generating social media content, a newsletter article, and so on, right? But this was specifically about SEO and the blog article section. Now I want to use the last like 5 to 10 minutes to see if anybody else has any questions, anything that we haven't yet answered around this topic, so that you can also personalize this training in this session for yourself. All right. Well, I would say, Evan, any last tips? Anything we haven't gotten through yet or covered?
Yeah, just one note, as Justin mentioned, EEAT. It's really a basic thing, but I see so many brands missing it. Having an author on your blog, so it's not just your brand, but having a named author, even if it's just somebody on your team or it's the CEO or something, maybe they're probably not writing the blog posts, but having that author name on there, connecting it to their LinkedIn profiles or other active social profiles, that just gives a web that Google and AI can trace and say, okay, there's somebody behind this who knows it. And it's super important if you're writing about any sort of regulated field or anything that has to do with money or health. You should have not only authors, but this MD, this doctor with a doctorate from Harvard Medicine read this article and approved of it, and here's their information and where they work and all this stuff. That's super, super important. And always check. Also good for authority is having sources and stats, but always double check them, because I've seen so many times still with the newest models, they will make up stats or they'll misrepresent what the stat actually means or attach some meaning to it that isn't actually related to the stat itself. So you can ask for them, you can put them in there, and it is good at finding them, but you've got to double check them and make sure that where it's sourcing from is it's actually saying what it says it's saying.
Yeah. Very, very well put. There are lots of wisdom pieces that were mentioned in the training today. Again, you'll get the transcript, you'll get the recording. We'll share all those pieces of information with you. And then, of course, you have Evan's contact details then. I'll put them in CC in the email. You'll have mine. You can, if you don't have our details on LinkedIn yet, you can add us there. Well, I'd say, Evan, we concluded. And thank everyone for being here. And have a good rest of the day, evening, morning, wherever you tune in from. And we'll chat, read, see you guys soon.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye.
See you. Bye.